Welcome everyone to the Sabian studio. Today we have a very special guest. We have Jeff Hamilton. Welcome, Jeff.
Thanks.
Jeff's played with everybody. I can't even mention all the names because the Jeff Hamilton Trio, Oscar Peterson, Diana Krall, and countless others. And Jeff's visiting the factory for, well, you've been here a number of times over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And we're having a lot of fun for the last 3 days, just working on some hammer tone cymbals, just fine tuning your regular models and kind of working on some new stuff, just having some fun. So how's it going?
Well, it's great to be back with the Sabian family. I mean, a lot of the people are still here, and you walk through and see a lot of the familiar faces doing the hammering and the lathing, and you go, okay, I'm back home. This feels great.
Yeah. No, it's been great. I know you know the hand hammer guys well, Charlie and Dwight and Judd now is kind of taking over the lead latheman. And,
Right.
really great craftsmen and working towards refining your specific sound. I mean, the hammer tones have a very specific sound that fits your playing and all jazz playing, by the way, and they're very beautiful cymbals, but it takes a certain style of creativity and design to accomplish that. And we're playing around with some different bells and different sizes and just kind of pushing the envelope a little bit in different directions, and you're finding a few things that really work for you.
Yeah. Well, I think it all started with you understanding what I was looking for, and then, as you said, Dwight and Charlie and Roy and people have been here for a long time. It's not a factory job. These guys are artists, and how they know how to hammer. Really, it's kind of like they look at you in the eye and they kind of get what you're about with what you're trying to get across, and they understand that. So the other day we just needed a little more hammering on a bell, and boy, Charlie just in 5 minutes he was done. Well, here it is. That's exactly it. That's the sound we're looking for.
They seem to understand when you explain what you're looking for, and they know how to achieve that, which is a great skill. It certainly makes our job easier for sure.
Right.
Now you have your own stick, and it's very small point, so it's a different design, but it really brings the tone quality out of the hammer tone cymbals that you're looking for, and a different feel than maybe you would get out of a 5A. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a dense stick. Even though it's small in diameter, it's a dense stick, so it's deceiving. You pick it up and you think you're going to throw it over your shoulder, but there is some weight to it. It has a thicker shoulder under the beads, so it is sturdy, and when you hit the cymbal, that shoulder doesn't give very much, as opposed to a thinner shoulder that does give. The long bead I borrowed from the great drummer Don Lamont on Woody Herman's band. It was the 8D Don Lamont stick, but it had a thin shoulder and it kept snapping. So I just put a thicker shoulder on it, and then Don Lamont was able to keep his 8D, and then we had the Jeff Hamilton 8D too, because Don and I were friends, and I'm not taking his stick away from him. So that's how we arrived at that. So it's kind of a meatier feel when you hit the stick. The long bead gives you more of a ting than a round ball, which was more of a duh. So that's why I like that sound.
It's amazing the sound difference when you play with your stick, and then you just pick up a round bead.
Right.
Like it's changes the cymbal totally and the feel. You're giving us some pointers on the angle and different things that really affect how the cymbal responds. So
everybody's been an excellent student here too, Randy. I mean, they all they're like walking around doing this now with the stick. It's like okay.
No, it's been great. I guess one thing we could talk about a little bit is the logo change, or not the logo necessarily, but the designation.
Right.
So we've moved the Crescent hammer tone models from Crescent into the HH line because they are hand hammered.
Right.
So you will see a different presentation on the cymbals, but it's the same cymbals. They're made the same way, and you have one right there, Jeff. If we wanted to share that logo.
Oh, sure. This is a 22 that we just did, that you just did with the fellas.
Yeah.
And go ahead and you can.
Yeah, so it's just the HH logo, which you would see the same font on all our HH, and it's a hammer tone ride and the size, so it's the same presentation. Jeff's signature inside the bell. Guess we have a few extra notes on this one, and the Sabian logo. So moving forward, this is the style designation you will see on all the hammer tones. But beautiful cymbals. It's in this design is a little more challenging for the hand hammer guys versus some of the other hand hammer, just because We have very accurate templates that we have to achieve a profile with, and then we do some specific lathing where we taper the cymbal in different
Right.
thicknesses in certain areas to achieve that stick articulation combined with the warm wash and how they open up. So, you know, it's a great cymbal, and we certainly have the craftsmen here that know how to make it.
What does
So.
this say? Charge Jeff $25 more for this, all the work done on this? Oh, not that writing under the
Yeah.
cymbal. Yeah. No, but it's beautiful. We love the flexibility of this. They're not manhole covers, if you will.
Yeah.
I mean, they're flexible and.
Yeah, and you play with the 3 rivets
Right,
in your
right.
ride and 2 in the china.
Yeah, I keep them away from the stick area,
Yeah.
so I put the rivets away from where you're going to hit it with the stick.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, we've been trying to train the logo personnel to make sure they balance the cymbal before they print it. They're
Right.
trying to get it so you're not playing on that logo. Sometimes it doesn't always work out 100%, but it's we're trying.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, we really we did a great job with these just experimenting with a few things within the Hammertone
Yeah.
series, and it was exciting. You know, they're all in that same range though as the
Yeah.
Hammertone.
And you've been here 3 days, and we've been making a few each day, and it's
Right.
amazing how much they change from one day to the next, or even from 1 hour to the next
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
When they're brand new, just lathed, they're a bit tight, and you know they don't want to maybe breathe and open up as they will in a short time.
Well, I had to laugh, you know, because I'm supposed to be focused about exactly what I want, you know. And I come in, and you put a symbol up yesterday that was. I thought, why are you even bringing this out? I'm not going to like this, you know. And in less than 24 hours, you know, it's like this is all right.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
this is starting to sound like it's in the family, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it was out of your comfort zone. It certainly was. Now, it would be appealing to a lot of drummers out there, but it's not your sound. So we've evolved it over the last couple of
Right.
days into
Right.
something that really
Right.
fits, and I'm excited for it because it's different enough from the Hammertone, but it has that Hammertone flavor.
Yeah.
So you know, we'll see how things go, but
Yeah.
hopefully it's part of the family down the road.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. Yeah. So Mina, if we have a few questions, maybe we could take a few.
Absolutely. The chat has been a little busy here for you guys. So JDI Drums is wondering, is there a difference between the same models of cymbals for endorsees compared to what a customer might buy from a retail store?
Well, mine are $25 more, as you just heard. You know,
Yeah. No, we make the Hammertones or any Sabian cymbals the same. You know, Jeff comes here and picks out his own, but well, not all the time. We ship them to him sometimes, but no, we don't make special cymbals for artists over the general consumer. We make them a certain way, and when we get an order, we just pick them that way. If they're good enough to get that logo, then they're good enough to be shipped out.
As an artist, I don't particularly like that idea of, oh, well, we're making it for this artist, but you know we can't make that for everybody, so we'll just you know. And so that's a sticking point with me in the business, actually, for companies that do that. And that's one of the things that I like about Sabian is that the artist is there to help design it, and that's the symbol that's going to be shipped out. So that's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Consistency is key across the board.
Yeah.
Jeff, for you specifically, Aryo Pratima, sorry if I did not say that name correctly, he's wondering what your perfect ride is.
My perfect ride is the one that Mark Love is going to come up with before I leave here. I love a 22, the Hammertone 22-inch ride cymbal for me, and you know, I'm a little different than a lot of drummers because I subscribe to the Mel Lewis method of cymbal playing, which is if you crash it, it's a crash cymbal. If you ride it, it's a ride cymbal, and a good cymbal you should be able to do both with. So my 22 is crashable, and it can be you know, a ride cymbal as the 20, the Hammer China, Hammertone China, and the hi-hats I even crash on. So, but for ensemble playing or big band or a group ensemble passage, the 22 Hammertone is my main go-to ride.
Interesting. Indefinite is wondering if Sabian has their own stick company.
Yes, not that I'm aware of. No, we've looked at getting into the stick business, but that's not something Bob wanted to do, and it's not something that Andy has any intention of moving towards. So, we'll make the cymbals, and we'll leave the stick making to the stick makers.
Fantastic.
If we can have a moment about the stick, as you said before, the round ball on my favorite ride cymbal does sound different, and so the innovative percussion Jeff Hamilton model is what I'm using now, which really brings out all of the qualities that I'm trying to get. So
Absolutely. Interesting. KH says, hi, Jeff and Mark. Thank you for doing this. Kevin Hill here.
Yeah, Kevin.
He wants to know, the hammer tones are remarkable instruments, and my question is where to strike the china specifically. Any tips would be great.
Well, I can tell you, but I'd have to kill you. That's how I keep working. Yeah, where the shoulder kind of comes down into the valley, you want to go up about an inch above that to play the side of the shoulder. And I also play it like this. I don't strike the china like this. And it's right side up with the lip coming up like this. I'll have some people helping me set up once in a while, and they'll turn the china upside down like I'm going to crash it. And I'll just look at them and go, jazz, please. And they go, oh, sorry, and they'll turn it back up so the lip comes up like this. But about an inch above where that valley is where usually the playing surface is the best stick sound, and it gets the low end of the cymbal and kind of the roar that we're going for. It should be the crowd noise. That's what I'm looking for. Now, having said that, there are times on ballads where I will play a real straight eighth note, just that stick height, and just get out on the edge of it and just dust it off like this with the stick, and that gives a beautiful sound. Also, a brush doing that on a soft tune is beautiful. So that's a long answer, but that's why I designed the cymbal that way, so you can get different things out of it, and then strike it with your hand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think Kevin's going to be pretty happy with that answer.
Kevin, we both know Kevin.
Oh, Kevin, that was Kevin.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's
all
a
right.
big fan of you and the hammer tone
Yeah, Kevin's
collection.
great. Yeah.
And he actually texted me last night and asked, "Did you show Jeff the flat ride with the micro bell in it?"
Okay.
I said, "Well, we don't have many left of those, but I did try." But the flat ride, I get hit with a stick when I said that.
Yeah. Kevin, mind your own business. Okay.
Well, Mark, you just segued us into our next question perfectly, because this user is anonymous, there is no name, but he's wondering what Jeff's favorite flat ride is.
I knew this was coming. And
It's one with a bell in it.
yeah. And you're not anonymous. I know who you are. You're one of three rascals. I've never been a fan of ride cymbals, so that's kind of a put up. If it's not, I'm going to find out who it was. And no, I like a bell. I like a cymbal that has some overtones, and I've never been really a flat ride fan. But thank you for the chuckle.
Kevin is back again in the chat, and he's saying, why do you choose the sizes of 22 and 20 instruments, inch instruments specifically?
For Mark or for me?
For you, sorry,
Okay,
Jeff.
so, well, a lot of people think of a 22 as being a big, heavy, loud cymbal for a big band or a rock band, and you can really have at it with it. The creation of the hammer tone is a softer feeling cymbal, but I still played in a big band. I got a 19-piece jazz orchestra, Clayton Hamilton Jazz Orchestra, and I use the same set of cymbals in my trio, acoustic trio with upright bass, no amplifier, and I do the 19-piece big band and an orchestra. So it's a lot of it's right here in how you know how to treat the instrument. So the 22, I would say, Mark, my 22 isn't a normal 22 that's anyone else makes. It's not hard sounding. It's not harsh sounding. It has warm overtones. You still hear the stick clarity, and I don't need a 21 or a 20 for what I do. I can get everything out of the 22. The 20 is a great piano trio cymbal or small group or vocalist if you need to play lighter for some vocalists. And they have a lot of room to either get larger sounding or within the pianissimo range you need, but it's how if you know how to do that. But these cymbals ask you to play them properly. And a lot of 22s I think that are out there, it's just you're looking at them and you look at the cymbal and you go, that's a loud cymbal, that's a harsh cymbal, that has a lot of attack. And that's not what the Hammertone 22 is about.
Interesting.
Your cymbals are really where everything else has been trending for the last 10 years.
Oh.
You've got that, the trend has been thinner, maybe darker in a way, but from the specs have really changed over the last 10 years. Like, from the heavier cymbals, it's getting lighter. But a medium ride was 10 years ago. A new model would be even lighter. So everything's trending to that. So it's a ride and a crash, whatever you want to do, even in some of the heavier models.
Is there any way for me to cash in on that? To be this conversation's over.
This is an interesting question. 1-2 user is asking Jeff, for the sake of this conversation, we'll say besides the current model, what series, the current series, which cymbal series or other cymbals in particular do you keep coming back to over the years besides the Hammertone?
I don't.
That's that.
I've been playing that kind of a cymbal since, I don't know, most of my career. Hand hammered, and the shape of it, that's just, I've just been playing those kinds of cymbals. And so the Hammertone is the dialed-in version of everything that I've been playing up to now. So.
And if it ain't broke,
No.
don't
I'm
fix
kind
it.
of like that. If I get one thing, that works for me, then I don't have 20 different cymbals for. Like I just said, I use the same set of cymbals for trios I do big band.
Right.
So
Right.
if something works, you stick with it.
Yeah,
How long
and
have
I-
you been married, you say?
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the hand hammering versus machine hammering, because your cymbals are totally hand hammered. Now, there are, a lot of companies out there are actually making machine hammered cymbals, and the perception is that they're hand hammered, but there is a difference, and you've experienced that in the quality of sound. We make machine hammered cymbals as well, but we tell people they're machine hammered.
Right.
So what's your explanation of the sound difference between hand hammered and machine hammered?
Well, first of all, I think that if you have any kind of eye for hammering, you can look at a cymbal that wasn't hand hammered, and you can tell immediately because there's the same pattern design of the hammer marks on the cymbal, and that's the dead giveaway. So that's not a hand hammered cymbal. You strike it, and then you hear, to me, all cymbals that aren't hand hammered tend to have a resistance to the stick. I like to describe the stick when it hits the cymbal as a knife dropping through melted butter. It should be that gentle of a feel, and then you hear the response of what the cymbal sounds like after you let the stick drop on it, instead of forcing the stick into a piece of metal and having the metal throw the stick back in your face.
Right.
So that's kind of the feel that I'm looking for from any cymbal that I play, and I never have been able to get that from a hand-hammered cymbal. I don't care if you start machine hammering cymbal and then finish it off with hand hammering. I've tried some cymbals with you, and I'll immediately say, "No, that's a machine hammered cymbal." It does something. I call it murdering the cymbal, because you're just beating the daylights out of this piece of metal before it can be refined. If it doesn't have hand hammering.
It changes the structure versus hand hammering. In hand hammering, we can do, hammering on the underneath side versus the top and adjust the tension so that it, it's not rigid. It's musical and has a nice even timbre when it opens
It's
up.
almost like, relying on a metronome for tempo as opposed to a drummer who can provide a feel.
Right.
And keep that tempo. And you've got the people hammering that have that same kind of rhythm and tempo of what they do, as opposed to a machine going tick, tick, tick,
Yeah.
So,
And I know Andy always uses this explanation or analogy. It's, all the hand hammer guys do it a little differently, but it's that energy that they have, they're putting into that metal, and they get it back out when we finish the cymbal. And they're not all exactly the same, but they're within that family of sound.
as a drummer, I'm watching, and one person's wrist will be a little tighter.
Yeah.
The arc will be a little higher than the next, and then
Yeah.
Dwight is like flopping the wrist down, and and he's got the long arms, and so it's interesting. But the result on the cymbal is very similar to what they do.
It's a great craft.
Yeah. They're artists.
You actually really just answered the next question in line without me having to ask it. Kevin had asked again, but what's unique about the crescent hammer, and how does the shape change the sound versus the HH hammering? So you guys just threw that in there. Unless you want to expand on it
Well,
more
yeah,
based
the
on what I
only-
just said.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add is on Jeff's cymbals in particular, we use 2 different hammer sizes. So one, the traditional hammer we call it, then we use an oversized hammer, and we use 80% of one and 20% of the other. That kind of creates a unique acoustic and feel to the cymbal as well. So, and that's the only one that we mix it up on, really. It's part of the design.
Sam Chino is asking, the ride looks like it has concentric circles, he thinks, within the lathing, but what is that specifically that he's seeing?
You're talking about the tonal grooves, and on your cymbals, you know, you want to use brushes on them, so we have to have deeper tonal grooves. So it is concentric circles, just more aggressive lathing when we do the finish pass. And you can talk about how the grooves work when you apply brushes. But
That's all part of the music. That's all part of the creativity that you need on the cymbal. I use the ring of the brush to get that. Fingernails. You know, you get these zing qualities in playing, and that's what the lathing will do. That's what the circles are. That'll be $50. I usually get paid a lot of money for this stuff, you know.
just add it to my tab.
Not lately.
Everybody's getting free lessons that tune in today. Brian Herward is wondering if there's any possibility of a lighter china within your line.
I would ask him why he would like a lighter china.
So he continued to say that previously he had one blow out the rest of his cymbals even with a light touch.
That doesn't mean necessarily that the cymbal is the wrong thickness. You could be playing it incorrectly. There could be a spot on the cymbal that sounds gongy or louder than the others. You got to find the sweet spot on it. And like I said, when I play the china, my stick doesn't come up any higher than that. When I'm playing the 22, it'll come up here, but I'm playing the china like this. So it's kind of like you have to baby the china to get it where you want it volume-wise. So I would encourage him to stay with that cymbal to see if if the cymbal really is okay. It's not like you could just apply your same technique to every cymbal. That cymbal kind of makes you play it a certain way. So I would experiment with that first. But lighter chinas, thinner chinas, or they get kind of whiny, I like to say. Instead of da-ga-da. And the design that I'm looking for in the hammer tone china is to get under the band, so it's this crowd roar of I mean, that's my go-to cymbal when things get hot. And I want the excitement to start building when I get to that, and just kind of feel the room levitating from that cymbal, not volume, but the sound and the intensity you can get from that cymbal.
Right.
So that's why the pitch is kind of where it is, instead of a thinner cymbal. And if you crash it, that's another story. If you just use it as a crash cymbal, you can have them as thin as you want or thick as you want, but it's got to be that sound that you're looking for.
Another $50
Did you have
on
something
the
to add
tab.
to that?
I mean, your china is very unique in our lineup. You know, a lot of chinas are thin and they're just made as an effect to be loud and cutting. Where yours is a ride cymbal that you can use as a china and
Right.
crash as well.
Right.
So it's very unique that way. And you set it up like a traditional cymbal. You
Right.
don't invert it. So
Right,
it's,
right.
you know, it's the design that works.
Well, I like to get my money's worth out of the cymbal. I use all of it, you know.
This next question is from Sasquatch27. It's specifically for you, Mark. It's a little bit off course here, but he's wondering how many artisan cymbals are made per year, because he has a 22-inch light ride that's numbered, and he's curious what number in the line.
Yeah, we just surpassed on our artisan crash. We just surpassed 10,000. We're up to 10,180 something. I signed one yesterday, actually. But that's just the crashes. The rides have their own numbering system. The hi-hats have their own numbering, suspendeds, orchestral cymbals. And we've been making those for over 20 years, the artisans, probably 25. So, yeah, I don't know. It's not huge numbers as far as production, but it's steady. Like every day we're picking them. So I don't know if it's, 1,000 a year. Roughly, I'm just guessing, throwing a number out there, but it's, they're very nice cymbals, and they're the high end of our catalog price range, and but the people that love them a lot, so we continue to make them, but roughly that's about as many as we make.
Fantastic. Next one here is from Austin Baker, and he's wondering, Jeff, why do you mic your kit with only 2 overheads and nothing else when you perform? He loves the idea. He's just curious as to why.
I do that because he loves the idea of that. He heard me play recently in Austin, so he knows the balance I get with just 2 overheads. I feel like the drummers a lot of times don't have their own balance. I feel like I was told at 17 years old by the great Jack Guilfoyle, who was a great drummer in Indianapolis, told me that he asked me to play, and I played, and everything was out of balance. He said, "What was the loudest thing when you played?" And I said, "My bass drum." And he said, "Yeah. What was next?" I mean, all wrong. So I had to think of what should be the loudest. And in jazz, the ride cymbal should be there with your hi-hat second, snare drum, bass drum last, except for accents. So if you're thinking of being your own sound engineer at the drums, and you have your balance really where you want it, it's harder for sound engineers to mess up your sound unless they have more microphones. And then Randy and I talked about this earlier about, if each drum is mic'd, they can dial in whatever they want. They can make your tom. I hear a lot of recordings where the mounted tom is louder than anything else in the drum set. It's like, that's not my sound, So with the 2 overheads, I'm able to really control my sound. Now, you play the Hollywood Bowl for 18,000 people, which I will with Diana Krall in July. Yeah, you got to have more mics. But in a hall of 2,500 with an acoustic jazz band, I don't want the bass drum to be hitting you in the nose. I want you to sit back and absorb the sound that I'm offering you instead of punching you in the nose with my volume. And I don't like it when people say, "Oh, that bass drum was right here." I don't want the bass drum there. I want to invite you into my sound, and that's why I love the 2 overheads.
Interesting. So when you do the Hollywood Bowl, is that going to be another research project on how to properly mic that, or will you go back to like a more standard setup?
I'm going to keep my mouth shut and have the Hollywood Bowl people do the sound that they do, because they only do it their certain way, because they know what
That's
works
fair.
for 18,000 people
Right.
at an outdoor. I'm not done at an outdoor festival. So actually, Diana's sound crew will be doing that sound. So we'll get our sound, but there will be more mics. An outdoor place, you have to have a little more than that. But in a venue that's reasonable, I just like 2 overheads. Which includes concert halls. You can, I want to bring the people into what we do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Mark, this one's going back to you specifically. 1-2 is wondering which cymbal series you personally prefer.
Well,
Today?
what's the next question?
This turned into the hot seat really quickly.
Yeah, don't ask dumb questions.
Jeff and I were just talking upstairs about different sounds and how we have, his perception of what he's looking for versus where I sit. I have to be open to all different styles of sound. So it's like, asking who's your favorite child in a way. Like you help create all these great series with all these different artists, and you can't really have a favorite because there are different genres and different styles, and we love them all. If they're in our catalog, we love them. Yeah.
This is from Andy Wise, and he's wondering, are the same hammer tone models offered both with and without rivets?
Of course. But
Lovely.
for Andy, they're $50 more per cymbal. Andy's a good friend.
Yeah.
We talked about Andy earlier today, so thanks for joining us, Andy.
Only good things, I'm sure, Andy.
Unless specified, they all come without rivets, but if they ask for rivets, then we include
We
them.
can
So
make it
just
happen.
FYI.
Lovely. Brian Claxton is wondering, can you explain a little bit of the science of the cymbal shape, weight, lathing, and what hammering does to the cymbals?
Wow.
Brian, are you starting your own cymbal company?
Seems suspicious.
I thought we covered that in the first drum lesson with you, Brian. Well, how much can we talk about this, or the shape of
Yeah, I mean, everything we do affects the sound of a cymbal,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I mean, when you
yeah.
hammer a cymbal,
Yeah.
you're compressing the metal.
Right.
And the sound, when you excite a cymbal, the sound wave goes in concentric circles and in and out from the bell. And when that sound wave hits a compressed area or hammer mark, the sound speeds up. So how you hammer that cymbal, the style of hammering mark, the depth, whether it's hammered top or bottom, that all affects how the sound flows off of that. And that's just one factor. You have the bell size, you have the profile, you have the lathing, the thickness, the taper of metal, and then you have the tonal grooves, pinpoint versus coarse lathing. That affects the sound, it affects the tension. if you apply more lathing on one side versus the other. They're all factors, and they all are part of the recipe for each series of cymbals we make. So, I mean, everything is crucial. I mean, the last few days we've been working on cymbals, and you know, this one sounds great, but it's a little tight, and we go out and we do some different few tricks. And
the edge is a little thick, or you know,
if it's thick on the edge, that kind of tightens the cymbal up and won't let it freely open up. So, you know, we're here at the factory, so we can do those things. You know, we try to make every cymbal correct when it leaves here, but when you're doing R&D, you've got to try all these things to get that specification perfect, so you know when you're mass producing, this is the recipe, this is what you have to do. And it's the same throughout each series. You know, we're working on hammer tone cymbals the last few days, but if it's an AAX or an AA, it's the same principles. They're just, you know, we're dealing with different thicknesses, different bells, and a few different techniques, but it's all back to the basics on cymbal design.
Awesome.
So there, Brian.
I think he was taking notes on that one for sure. 916 drummer is asking if you can talk about how the cymbals sound to the player versus the audience.
Well, I went to see Mel Lewis, and we became friends, I'm happy to say. But Mel could be very abrupt in the way he handled answers to apparently stupid questions. I walked up to at the Village Vanguard to him one night, and I said, "Boy, your cymbals just sound fantastic." And he said, "Yeah, sit down and play them." And so I played them, and I said, "Wow, they sound completely different here than they did out there." And he says, "Well, what do you care what they sound like here, dummy? They're the people paying $40 to hear them." You know, it's like, oh. She said, "It's important how they sound in the room, you know, so they got to sound okay here. But how do they sound out there? Can you hear them? Do they project? You know, so all that, you got to keep that in mind." I think sometimes we, as drummers, go into a drum shop and we'll just put a stick on a lot of cymbals, and there's one that just, wow, this is a beautiful cymbal. And usually it's a low-pitched cymbal that goes, ah. And you go, yeah, that's the one. You take the low-pitched cymbal into your band, and you can't hear it because the overtones are getting lost in the guitars and the trombones and the bass, because it is a low-pitched cymbal. So when we're listening to a cymbal, you got to listen for how it's going to blend with your band. That's why I feel like my hammer tone series is a mid-range cymbal. It has some kind overtones both above and lower, but not so low that you lose all of that cymbal when you're playing with the band. Even with the drums, I took a couple of cymbals up to the drum studio here, and they weren't blending with the drum set. They were beautiful downstairs by themselves, but it wasn't the sound I was looking for when I had the whole drum set going. So you got to be careful in selecting the cymbal, but you can't have the blindfolds on with the cymbal and a stick and go, "That's a great cymbal." There's more to think about. How does this cymbal sound in every situation, or how does it sound 20 feet from here? You know, so I think that would be a good lesson for drummers to keep in mind. Don't just, you know, it's not just what's happening here.
And how many times in the last few days did we stand behind the cymbals and play them, and then get out front?
Yeah.
And wow, they sound different from over here. They sound different. I know Randy and you and I were each changing places and checking them out.
And then yesterday we went to the side, and they sounded even different. You know, two of them sound exactly alike that didn't sound like that out front. So
everything matters.
Yeah. Just be careful not to have the blindfolds on when you're trying to cymbal it. You know.
Interesting. Thank you for that. More free lessons. And another question again here. Sam Chino, he said earlier you referenced that everybody at Sabian has been a good student and made the hand motion. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the technique that you've been teaching everyone here?
Yeah, this is free lessons. Yeah. This answer can be yours with the purchase of a cymbal. Generally, it's one motion with your wrist. I don't use my arm very much, so it's just raising your hand up and getting a hold of it with this, letting the stick drop and get 3 bounces, da da da, and pick up the stick. And that really is all it is. I'm not copying out on it. That's all it is.
Interesting. Thank you. For Mark specifically, Are a Sabian HH crossover 21 ride considered as a good jazz ride?
Yeah, I mean, they were like a crash ride type cymbal. They were, I believe, lathed on the bottom and partially raw on top.
I guess the answer is no.
And I believe we still have a few of those in Area 51 after they were delisted. But they are a great cymbal. They're a bit on the dark side, as Jeff was just describing. They some articulation from that raw surface, so they're a little more pronounced there. But overall, they're a darker cymbal. It's still a lot of dark cymbals are good jazz cymbals as well. So yeah, I mean, must be some still out there in stores.
Somewhere.
Ask you about that. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Gary Hobbs is wondering how the shape of the bow of the hammer tone differs from other Sabian differs from other Sabian rides.
Gary Hobbs is a dear friend of mine and a fantastic drummer, and I had Gary Hobbs in my head when we were looking at a couple of these samples, and I'm going to make sure he gets one because it's right up his alley. The shape of it, it tends to be a little more bowed than a spaceship, if you will, than a lot of the other cymbal designs, and that for me that creates a warmth of the overtones and will raise the pitch slightly and provides a great stick sound with the angle of the shoulder and where the stick hits the shoulder, and those are the reasons really for that profile. But Gary, there's a cymbal here with your name on it. It's pretty unbelievable. I can't wait to share that with you.
Because of that higher bow, there's more hammering required to achieve that shape. So you're putting more cold work into that metal, which contributes to that great sound as well.
Fantastic. Andy Wise again here. He says the hammer tone hi-hats are hand hammered bottoms and machine hammered tops. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, there's no machine hammering on any of the hammer tones.
Fantastic.
They're totally hand hammered, 100%.
And tell Andy Weiss he's starting to get on our nerves.
If he's still watching, he heard you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, nothing in the hammer tone series. They're hand hammered.
Fantastic. Ryan Walsh is wondering, why does machine hammering usually result in bright sounds versus hand hammering resulting in complex, warm, dark tones?
Well, it's not totally the hammering, but it's just the different peens that we use, and we normally start with thicker cymbals too. So the pitches are higher to start with, and in some models like AAX, we want a higher frequency cymbal. So that's required. So we have a full sound palette in our catalog. So it's the thickness we start with. A lot of them are thicker. The bells could be bigger, and the hammering is adjusts the profile a little bit more. But typically it's more the thickness of the metal and less taper in the lathing that we use versus a hammer tone or some of the hand hammered cymbals.
I think the personal touch is missing from the machine hammering. I liken it to a drum machine that gives you a steady, monotonous bop bop, and you take the hammer out of the person's hand that's touching the cymbal and knows how far the hammer needs to go, and you're getting the personal element of what is going into that cymbal and how hard to hit it, where the next one needs to be. Where on the machine hammering, the cymbal shifts and the machine comes down and has the same pressure point on that cymbal, and I think it takes the personality out of the cymbal, and if that's what you're looking for, that's fine. If you want the consistency of that same thing all the way around, but for me and being a jazz drummer, I want that personality of that cymbal to speak out.
There's a difference also between a strike and just a squeeze. If you're squeezing the metal, which a machine typically does, and a hammer strikes the metal, and there's kind of a shock waves that come out from that, where a machine it's compressing that area, it moves on, so it affects the acoustic of the cymbal differently, just the way it's done.
Thank you, guys. This question has been asked twice now. Carl Allen is wondering what kind of watches you wear, Jeff.
Carl Allen, my dear friend, you know the answer to this, but my answer will be I only wear watches that I can't afford that you wear. The Hamilton Timekeeper wears a Hamilton Timekeeper, and this particular model is called the Jazz Master. Did you have any more questions, Carl?
Oh, that's funny. I thought that question was a little odd when I first saw it come through, and then I saw it come through again, and I said, "There's a backstory to that," and I'm wondering.
Yeah, no, it's okay. All right. Delete him from this.
Another a little bit of an off-topic question, but Burnaby89 is wondering if the Toll Spire chime set or something similar will ever come back.
The Toll Spire chimes. Yeah, we made those in cast. I got a set of 5 different little bells, what they were on a stand. We sold those for a while, but they seemed to fall out of popularity, and they went away. I'll never say they won't come back, because what goes around comes around. But there's no plans right now to bring them back in the near future.
Thank you. Andrew Vermigilio is wondering what the best kind of ride for a drummer with a high frequency hearing loss is.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
What the best kind of... Oh my gosh. I did. Jeff. You got me. You got me.
How would we know? I think you got to just go around and test cymbals and see what you hear well and what doesn't offend other people that you're playing with. You know, and that would be your answer. So, yeah.
Or buy hearing aids.
Well, but some of those can change your, you know. So. Take your band with you when you try out a cymbal. You know.
Yeah. Andrew is wondering how much a tonal difference there is between a natural finish ride compared to the brilliant finish rides.
Yeah, so buffing a cymbal actually wears the tonal grooves off a little bit, and you're actually removing a little bit of weight when you buff a cymbal, and it heats it up quite a bit. It heats it up to about 400 degrees very quickly, and then it cools off. But by wearing those tonal grooves off, you're actually lowering the fundamental pitch a little bit, but by adding that kind of a mild tempering, it adds a glassy glitter high end to the attack. So you'd have to have 2 exact cymbals and buff one to really hear the difference. It's very subtle. But some people prefer that little bit of glitter in the attack, and by wearing those tonal grooves off, it creates a little bit different feel to the cymbal too. But it's very subtle. But brilliant finished cymbals typically are popular in rock music or pop, but jazz or especially jazz. That's kind of a no-no. Nobody wants a brilliant finished cymbal. So
Sure.
That changed over the years. Gene Krupa used to buff his cymbals, and Roy Burns tells the story of Benny Goodman asked Roy to sit in on Gene Krupa's drums, and Gene buffed his cymbals so often, and Roy was playing, and he was wearing a white shirt with a tie, and he went around the snare drum to the tom a few times, and he noticed people were looking at him like, well, I don't sound that bad, do I? He was slicing his shirt every time he went by the hi-hat, because Gene had buffed the cymbals so much that they were like razors sharp when he went around, and the people were horrified watching Roy play, and he thought he sounded bad, and all he had was blood all over his forearm from the cymbals. But they used to buff the cymbals a lot.
Yeah, we had an ex-cymbal tester here, one of the first cymbal testers when ASCO first started here. Still plays, but he would bring his cymbals in every few years and get buffed. And last time I saw them, there was no tonal grooves left on them. They were perfectly smooth, so they're getting thinner and thinner. Yeah. But they're his cymbals. He loves them, and he wants to clean them every now and then. So that does happen.
Yeah.
Interesting. Someone's wondering the bell size on the hammer tone cymbals and why you chose that size specifically.
Those are the sizes that worked. We tried a lot of different sizes. I mean, when you came to us with the Crescent design, basically we were trying to stick close to those specifications, and that's what works for you, right? I mean, that's, if you didn't want a big bell on your 20, you want it a little bit bigger. We call it a regular bell on your 22. It's a smaller bell on the 20. The hats have the regular, what we call the 14-inch cup, and the China has a kind of unique bell that works well in that design.
But you knew, looking at the cymbal, that this is the size of bell that we should be staying with, because a larger bell is going to produce maybe more overtones and out of control.
It's going to change the whole character of the cymbal if you change that bell.
Yeah.
So we're stuck with what we knew, basically.
Fantastic. On that as well, what is the specific weight range of Jeff's rides?
So the 22, not 100% accurate on this, but it varies. We have a range, like a quarter pound variance on the weight of most cymbals, and I believe yours is like a little over 5 pounds, like 5 pounds 4 ounces to 5.8 in there somewhere. You probably know the grams, but
I used to.
yeah.
But you know, it doesn't really matter. I don't look at that anymore. I never really did. I picked up the cymbal. I see how it felt, and I thought this has possibility. See how flexible it is. If it bends, the edges bend. Put it on the cymbal stand. Drop the stick on it once, get ding, and go. That's not going to work. Or that's the one. Or that's in the ballpark.
Yeah.
And it really didn't have a lot. I could tell by lifting the cymbal if it was the right weight or not. And I never really looked at the grams of what it was.
Yeah.
Now the hi-hats were a little more tuned in to the top has to be.
880 was
Yeah.
what we were finding worked yesterday.
Yeah, and I was trying to stay maybe between 830, 850, but what we settled on was the top was 850. And the bottom is like 1150 to 12 or
even 13.
13 that we experiment. So my favorite pair would probably be 820 over 1150, and that's not to the specs, No, it's got to be 1250 for the bottom. So I think we can get carried away with the weight of the cymbal, the grams, and reading it. And we start listening with our reading of the weight, instead of listening with our ears. And
yeah, it's like a gentleman that used to work here said, "We're not selling meat, so, so it doesn't matter."
Yeah, that's good. I like that. Borrow that one.
We've made some development on the anonymous question earlier of your favorite flat ride. That same person entered the chat and signed the message AZ, so I think we know who that question came from now.
Ask him where he's working tomorrow.
Nathan Saunders is wondering if the hammer tone will ever have a 10-inch splash join the family.
A what?
10-inch splash.
That must be a joke too. I've never had any splash of any size, so I doubt it. Yeah, and unless he pays me a lot for a gig to hear it, and then I'll show up.
Ooh. Bass Prince says, Mark, so long in the company. Congratulations on your great contributions.
Yes.
Will there ever be a Mark's ride to come out?
Not that I'm aware of.
Every ride's a Mark's ride.
Every ride's a Mark's ride.
And no plans that I'm aware of to put my name on any, unless it's an artist and I'll sign it for you. But
Okay, so I think we're just going to go with maybe one or two more questions here and then start to wrap things up. You guys can...
Yeah, quick, before the anonymous character...
Yeah, before he comes back in.
We're down to one nerve, and he's starting to get on edge.
So this is kind of in relation to the same question earlier about the sound of the cymbals to the drummer versus the audience. When you're looking at a new set of cymbals, do you have someone kind of play the cymbal for you, or you're setting up your kit on stage? Do you have someone play the cymbal for you and you take a step back to see and hear how that sounds from your perception?
I only do that when I have new cymbals, which I haven't had in a long time. So that whole process, I know what they're going to sound like. When I'm sitting there playing them, I know what they're going to sound like out in the hall, and so no, I don't do that. It's kind of interesting in some halls. If a student is there, I'll say I want to hear them play. I'll say, why don't you do the sound check, and I'll check the balance out in the hall, and I'll hear them, and they're pretty much spot on of what. But I also know that their sound is going to be a little different than my sound, so
Right.
I take all that into consideration. But I can hear them in the hall. Yeah. Hear the cymbal sound in the hall.
Interesting. Bob Terry says you spoke earlier about how your cymbals blend with your drum sound. Can you elaborate on that some more, please? Your $50 is in the mail on its way.
My good friend Bob Terry. Again, I have to reference Mel Lewis. Mel Lewis talked about having a big swirly sound around the drums, making sure the balance of the drums were in balance with the cymbals so that you could offer that to the band. If they sound good to you where you are, they're probably going to sound good to the band. If your time feels good, it's probably going to feel good to the band. Then you invite the band into that time feel. Well, it's the same thing with the sound. So if you've got a cymbal that you're beating the heck out of, and it's offensive to the band, or you're whacking rim shots with the snare drum and they can't hear your bass drum, everything is out of balance. So I did this with the cymbals, and Randy, you and Mark would watch me. I did the same stroke on each cymbal. When I went over to the drums and did everything, I did the same thing. What's the balance if I do the same thing all the way around the drums? If something jumps out, it's not tuned right, or there's somebody shoved Bed Bath and Beyond inside the bass drum, and I can't get any sound out of it, and so I've got to do something to make that sound a warm, inviting, beautiful sound. I only want to make beautiful sounds out of everything in the instrument. And having said that, I'm always approaching it as a musician who happens to own a drum set. I'm not a drummer that plays music. I like to think of being a musician. How can I create music with what I have in front of me? And there's your complete blend. Now, Mel Lewis said if you keep moving, you're going to hit something. Now, if you keep moving and hitting something, you don't want something to jump out unless you mean for it to. So I just kind of swirl around the drums and hit the bass drum and the cymbal, and there I get my blend and my balance within my whole kind of pot of stew, if you will, and there's no cilantro sticking out, I mean, everything is kind of it's blending together the way it should.
Right. Interesting.
I just made that. That was pretty good.
That was
What'd you
great.
think of that,
No,
Bob?
that was great.
That'll be $75.
Yeah, I was going to say an extra charge on top of that for that one. We're going to close the chat here, but I'm going to leave it with just one final comment from Kevin again. He says, thanks for bringing your sound to Sabian. Those Canadians sure know how to create a masterpiece. Nearly all of them are fantastic, and thank you both for the sounds that you've created over the years.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to leave closing remarks to you guys, and thanks for having me in here today. It's been interesting.
Well, thanks, Mark.
Thank you, and thanks for being a good sport for a bad joke earlier. But Mark is just, I want to thank Mark for all these years of getting it when people come in and talk about what they want. And Mark is right on it, and not only just physically what he has to do, but he gets into this part of it. So I don't know if there's anybody in the world like Mark Love when it comes to zoning in on that and what the artist needs and wants, and gets it just like that.
You're too kind. But
that'll be $75.
Thanks to you and all the other great drummers out there that bring ideas and their, the sounds that they're envisioning in their head that gives Sabian the opportunity to create those instruments. So thank you very much, and thanks for this.
I'll keep coming up and bothering you then.
Okay, absolutely.